This week, we shift towards strangulation as the endgame appears. Last week saw the Battle of Atlanta, where the final hope of Hood was squandered at the terrible cost of General McPherson. Shifting northeast to Virginia, Grant continues his grip on Davis's neck, laying siege to Petersburg. What will these final sieges bring if not the end of the Confederacy? Or are we fooling ourselves into a fantasy as the 1864 election approaches? Let's start this week strong. The 23rd, Louisiana adopts a constitution, pending ratification by the public, which ends slavery. Bravo! Next, let's enter the Valley of Death. Last week saw the pursuit of General Jubal Early following his failed expedition to capture the capital. The 6th and 19th Corps were recalled from the chaos, meaning once again the rebels have numerical superiority. When they realize this, they stop retreating and prepare for battle. Union learns of this and deploys on high ground, holding faith in their heavy guns, which can engage the enemy over a mile away. The engagement starts with 2 hours of skirmishing as the Confederate column forms into line. The confidence of Union Commander Crook is his downfall, as the secessionists familiar with the land sneak past our defensive lines and ambush our regiments. Soon they hold the hills. Pleas for reinforcements are heard, and the Federals march forward. When they arrive, it is seemingly too late. But with no fear in their hearts, they charge. Bravely they advance. The Confederate cannons cut down companies, but the courage of our men ensure many escape the horror of capture. But at the end of the day, the boys in blue fall back in defeat. We lost 1,200 men to the rebels' 600. Early gets to reclaim the valley. There is more to Virginia than the valley, but our eyes shift towards Petersburg. The Army of the Potomac surrounds Lee at Petersburg, threatening the lifeline of Richmond. General Grant has something big planned, a breakthrough that could end the war in days. But that is next week. This week, the rebels must be kept guessing. To force Lee's hand, General Sheridan with 3 cavalry divisions and General Hancock with the 2nd Corps would cross north and threaten Richmond, Virginia, from the strategic position of Deep Bottom. Confederate divisions are rushed, as the arteries that keep the Confederacy beating are about to be cut. Major General Kershaw is dispatched to deal with the Union thrust, constructing a defensive line along Newmarket Heights. This dissuades Hancock from storming the works, though he outnumbers the Greycoats almost 6-1. The 28th Rebel Brigades charge against Blue Cavalry, capturing a cannon, but at a cost. We lost 488 men to the secessionists 679. Unable to continually threaten Richmond, you might think Hancock a failure, and some do. But he has diverted attention from Grant's masterwork. Let's now turn to politics. 25th, Lincoln writes on his thoughts of the upcoming election.
I feel that the subject which you pressed upon my attention in our recent conversation is an important one. The men of the South recently, and perhaps still at Niagara Falls, tell us distinctly that they are in the confidential employment of the rebellion. They tell us distinctly that they are not empowered to offer terms of peace. Does anyone doubt that what they are empowered to do is to assist in selecting and arranging a candidate and a platform for the Chicago Convention? Who could have given them this confidential employment? But you only a week since declared to Jacques and Gilmore they had no terms of peace but the independence of the South, the dissolution of the Union. Thus the presidential contest will most certainly be no other than a contest between a Union and a disunion candidate. Disunion certainly following the success of the latter. The issue is a mighty one for all people and all time. Whoever aids the right will be appreciated and remembered. Yours truly, A. Lincoln.
Before we go to the glory of Georgia, action in Arkansas. Since the failure of the Camden campaign, both sides have turned to raids and skirmishes. The overall Confederate commander, Douglas Cooper, gives orders to Brigadier General Richard Gano to destroy a small contingent of cavalry. 200 Union horsemen are grazing at the Montserrat Prairie when over 600 rebels assault. Dismounted and outnumbered, our men fight, repulsing numerous charges. But exhausted, running low on ammunition, the blue line breaks. We lost 10 killed, 15 wounded, and 127 captured. The men of Gano suffered 7 KIA and 26 WIA, but they received much-needed weapons and ammunition. When the survivors of the battle reach the nearby Fort Smith, we begin a pursuit of the traitors, but it does not trouble them. 1862 has returned. Major General John Pope, commanding the Northwest, calls on a pursuit and destruction of the Dakota. Brigadier General Alfred Sully follows this order, pursuing the indigenous tribes to Killdeer Mountain, the site of battle. A single Sioux rider, Lone Dog, rides before the men of Sully, taunting them. Some claim Lone Dog had a charm making him impervious to guns. When the first shot is fired, the rest of the Native American soldiers arrive. The Union line advances inch by inch. Seems the goal of the tribal leaders was to protect the women and children, only fighting as to secure the civilian withdrawal. It comes at a brutal cost of 100 to 150 men, solely losing only 15. The aftermath is truly horrifying. An infant left behind in the Dakota camp is shot on sight. Pillaging and murder goes through the lodges of the Lakota. Even with this, Sully isn't satisfied, and he orders a pursuit through the prairie. What a terrible stain on the Union. But there is hope. Lincoln likes the state of the South.
My profoundest thanks to you and your whole army for the present campaign so far. A. Lincoln.
Finally, Georgia. The death of the beloved McPherson left a hole in everyone's heart, but also command. The Army of the Tennessee needs a new commander, and there are a few options. First is Major General Joseph Hooker, the highest-ranking commander in all of Sherman's roster, yet an illustrious corps leadership in the East, and also at Chattanooga. But his army command led to the greatest disaster at Chancellorsville. Recent bickering with Sherman has led to a bitter hatred between the two. Next is Major General Blackjack Logan. He is the highest-ranking commander in the Army of the Tennessee, and took command following McPherson's death. He also took command of Sherman's Corps, the 15th, following Williams' promotion. An able leader, a great officer. But he has been found quarrelsome and is one to criticize the orders given to him. He's also a politician, something that worries Tecumseh. Finally, there's Major General John Schofield. He's in good standing and a personal friend of Sherman. He has led the Army of the Ohio well. I don't know why he wasn't moved to the Army of the Tennessee. Maybe despite the numerical differences between the armies, it wasn't seen as a promotion. I honestly don't know. Instead of these three candidates, Sherman picks Major General Oliver Otis Howard, the 4th Corps commander, who oversaw the 11th Corps at Chancellorsville. He's a West Point graduate, a huge plus in Sherman's eye, and a friend to the commander. A grave insult to Hooker, a slight to Logan, and again, Schofield wasn't ever actually considered, so he had no reaction. Hooker sees it as too great an insult and tenders his resignation. It is accepted. He is given the Northern Department, which is technically a promotion, controlling Michigan, Indiana, Ohio, and Illinois. But there is no possibility for glory. He is replaced by General Alpheus S. Williams. While these decisions are being made, the Union cavalry is hard at work. Atlanta still stands. The siege would ensure its capture, but the aggressive Sherman is impatient. He orders General George Stoneman to take his cavalry southeast of the city, destroy the infrastructure feeding the rebel army, and then link up with General McCook, who was doing the same southwest of Atlanta. From there, they would carry on to Andersonville, for the tens of thousands of men suffering from Confederate capture. The raids become disjointed, and while many wagons are burnt, Stoneman fails to appear and link with McCook, instead carrying on to Macon for some reason. Prisoners at Andersonville will see no freedom. A shame. I now became satisfied that cavalry could not, or would not, make a sufficient lodgment on the railroad below Atlanta. Nothing would suffice but for us to reach it with the main army. The military division, nearly 100,000 strong, now must wait for a grueling siege, just as their brothers at Petersburg. Except Hood is no Lee. The sieges of Fort Donelson, Corinth, and worst of all, Vicksburg, hang heavily in the minds of the rebel Western commanders. To sit still would mean complete destruction. So the Army of Tennessee is once again mobilized. Like Sherman, Hood must fix his command. His former corps, led by Cheatham, is now commanded by Lieutenant General Stephen D. Lee. Fresh off the failure of Tupelo. Admittedly, before Tupelo, he had an amazing resume of brilliant movements and victories. He will lead the battle. Just like at Peachtree Creek and Atlanta, Hood hopes to bring his force to bear on a single section of Sherman's line. Trying the same thing that failed twice before doesn't sound wise, but I don't see any better options. The secessionists select the sector to the southwest, an area around Ezra Church. The high ground and the building control the land around it. Most importantly, the Lick Skillet Road, which is but one road removed from the Macon Railroad, keeping Hood's army alive. The advance of the rebels is soon discovered by a mistake, a lost division reporting to Howard. General Oliver knows Hood, having fought him in the west and east, and as a West Point classmate. He rushes to Ezra Church, arriving before the enemy, and begins to construct entrenchments. The corps in control of the church is General Logan, a man who had hoped for Howard's position. Sherman, who had been examining the full extent of his line, a giant U encircling all but the south of Atlanta, comes across the slow-moving Army of the Tennessee. He requests to move quickly, but Howard replies his confidence in the methodical march, and Sherman defers. It's a good thing he does, because when Lee arrives ready to fend the road and church, he instead finds the enemy in his front. With orders to hold the train and no knowledge of the Union position, he advances. His advance was magnificent, but founded on an error that cost him sadly. First in is the rebel division under General Brown. The woods were so dense that the works were not discovered until my line was upon them. In many places the works were carried, but the enemy reinforced so rapidly with such an immensely superior force that mob troops were driven with great slaughter from them. The calm command of Logan ensures his corps recaptures all the works taken. Brown falls back after suffering 800 losses. 10 minutes after he went in, to the right, General Clayton brought his brigade to bear. It met with similar results. General Stewart, a corps commander, had followed Lee to the scene of the battle. In lead was Walt Hill's division. At my suggestion, it was thrown against the enemy where Brown had attacked. It was a failure. The battle ends with 3,000 rebel casualties. Among the wounded are General Stewart, General Warren, General Johnson, and General Brown. Logan suffered 600 losses. Tactically, a great victory. Strategically, a loss, as Hood remains in control over the Lick-Skillet Road, and also advanced south towards the rail lines, but at a cost he can't afford again. Sickles, with the victory of the convention under his belt, well, his time in New Orleans comes to a close. The 24th, he boards the steamer Admiral, ready to continue his mission for Lincoln. Joining him is Governor Hahn, who hopes to present the President the new Constitution in person. This week saw a huge change, not from battle, not from legislation or election, but from command. Major General Oliver Otis Howard now leads an army, and Hooker has left the battlefield. I must say, I don't understand why Howard has remained for so long. Even if you blame Hooker for Chancellorsville, Howard still poorly led his corps. The same is true for Gettysburg. During his time in the West, he has been adequate. Honestly, I believe Hooker-Logan would be better. But I'm not here to decide, only to report. I must give credit that he did well at Ezra Church. The West redeems many Eastern commanders. I hope he is one of them. Well, it's the Stars of the Week by Week team here, and this is my third take on my birthday because I am an idiot when it comes to audio, and I would just like to thank everyone for being with me. I just realized how long I've actually been at this for, and it's amazing. It's amazing that so many of you guys have spent so much time watching what a loser does in his basement. So thank you, and I really do hope to see you next week.